Today I want to demonstrate how to create a multi-view, otherwise known as orthographic projection drawing. First thing you want to do is grab yourself a piece of orthographic grid paper, fill out the title block like you see down here at the bottom. Make sure you use all capital letters, nice and neat, just like a student engineer would do. Okay, the next thing we need to do is look at our pictorial drawing, which happens to be an isometric drawing, and determine its overall shape and its overall width, height, and depth. So the shape is sort of an L shape, like this, that also has a hole drilled into it, and it doesn't tell us how deep it goes, therefore we just assume it goes all the way through. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's determine its overall width, height, and depth. And I'm going to go ahead and write that in. So this here is my leading edge. I'm going to turn or step to the left, turn and face it. And what I'm looking at is the front. And so what is the width across the front? So the distance from here to here. These are what's called extension lines. We'll be getting into that here real soon. These are dimension lines with arrowheads, okay, and that is 8 blocks wide. All right, then we want to determine the height, and so that is from here to here. Again, those are extension lines. These are dimension lines. Those dimension lines have arrowheads on them, and that is 12 blocks tall. And then finally, the depth. Put my extension lines on there. My dimension lines, and that is 4 blocks deep. Now, you don't necessarily need to put extension and dimension lines, but I would certainly write the number of blocks around the surfaces of the object so you don't have to go back and recount them out at a different time. Okay, next, I want to go ahead and draw the front view as an overall rectangle before the object was carved out to look like the letter L. So if I zoom in again to the object, so I'm going to draw the front view as it was as a solid rectangle like this. Okay, and I'm going to do the same for the top and the right side view, and then I'm going to carve out the shape. That's called subtractive modeling. Okay, so I'm going to start with the front view on the lower right corner over here somewhere. I'm just going to come over 2 blocks and up 2 blocks and put a little dot. And that little dot is that spot right there in the front view. Okay, so actually before I go any further, let's go ahead and let's label the surfaces. So the front view, this is going to be surface A. In the top view, this is surface B, and then C, and then the right side view, this is surface D and E. Okay, and that'll help us out a whole bunch when we're over here drawing out the orthographic views. All right, so back to the front view. This little dot that I put right here where my cursor's at is that spot right there. So I want to go up 12, over 8, down 12, and back over 8, and make my rectangle. So to start with, I'm just going to draw some lines extra long. And make sure that you're drawing them lightly because they're construction lines. All right, I'm just going to count my blocks out. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 right here. Okay, and I'm going to draw that over. And it's 8 blocks wide. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And draw that down. So that rectangle is all of surface A before it was carved out. Okay, then I want to take my vertical lines from the front view and project them up. And the horizontal lines from the front view and project them over. And I'm going to go to this original corner that eventually is carved out. But before it's carved out, I'm going to take that point and draw a line at a 45-degree angle like this. Now, how do I know I'm drawing at a 45-degree angle? Well, we should know that a square, no matter how big or small it is, when you connect the opposite corners, that makes a 45-degree angle, which is exactly what I did with the grid. Okay, and then I'll even label that just for my own purposes. Okay, let's go ahead and draw the top view. We've got the front view roughed in. Let's rough in the top view, and that's going to be surfaces B and C. And so we know that that's 4 blocks deep and it's 8 blocks wide. So that overall rectangle we need to draw in. So this line here that makes up this edge of surface B and this line here that makes up the edge of surface C, that's what we're going to draw from left to right up here. And that line should be 6 blocks away from the front view. So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right here. Okay, so I want to draw that line. So again, that line I'm drawing is this line of B and C. Okay, then I want to draw back the depth in this direction. If you look at the isometric of my cursor, the depth. Okay, so I want to draw that up 4 over here. Go up 4, right there, and just make that a rectangle. Okay, now all of the horizontal lines in the top view project over to my 45-degree line. And once they touch the line, you then bend them down and drag them down. And that's going to make up the overall depth in the right side view. Now, why are we doing that? Well, because that's showing the relationship of depth that the top view and the right side view have in common. Why do we project these lines over from the front view? Because it shows that the front and right side have height in common. Why do we project these up from the front view? Because it shows the top and the front having width in common. Okay, so back to the right side view, what I'm circling here. Okay, that overall rectangle is surface D and E. All right, now let's go in and let's carve the shape out. Let's go back to the front view. We have part of it drawn. We have that line and that line. We have part of that line and part of this line. And so we need to find where those lines end, bring it down, find where this line ends and bring it over, and where they crisscross is that point. So I'm going to come over 4, crossed here. So 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. Bring that down just extra long. I'm going to go over to my leading edge. That's up 4 and then back 4. Okay, so up 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back until it touches or over 4. All right, so now I've made my L shape just like you see. I'm going to label that surface A just to help me out. And keep in mind that as we start carving out the surfaces, we want to start with only the visible surfaces and visible edges. If there's any hidden surfaces or hidden edges, we'll add that later. All right, so in the front view, the last thing I need to draw is this circle. And it's shown as an isometric circle, or known as an ellipse, in the isometric drawing over here. And so one thing that we need to know is that all circles and arcs and all ellipses and elliptical arcs, they're drawn from their center, they're dimensioned from their center, and then if you're on the computer and you need to move it, you grab it from the center and move it. So we need to indicate the center, both left and right and top to bottom. Okay, so follow my cursor over here. All right, so it's 2 over and 2 up. And I want to draw those little dash lines. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and go 2 over and draw a vertical dash, and then 2 up and a horizontal dash. Now those dashes are part of a new line called a center line. Look over here off to the side. A center line is a long line, a dash, and a long line. They can be drawn at any angle. They can be drawn in combination like this. They can be drawn at, again, any angle. Just depends on the object in which you're putting the center lines on. Okay? All right, so anytime that you're facing directly or looking directly at the circle, the arc, the ellipse, the elliptical arc, you're going to need two center lines. Okay, and so I'm going to draw my long lines with my dashes, and I have two center lines because I'm staring directly at the circle. And the size of the circle, the diameter is 2 blocks, or the radius is 1 block. So you're going to use your compass and set the size of the compass to the radius, and then you're going to strike your circle like that. Now, the center line is part of the drawing, but not part of the object. Therefore, these lines have to either extend past object lines or stop short, like over here, stop short of an object line. We do not want to end them, say like this, on an object line, because then it gives us the visual that the center line is part of the object when it's not. But yes, it is part of the drawing, but not part of the object. Okay. Will we delineate those lines? Yes, we will. We'll use our 6H pencil. Therefore, they'll only be so dark and so thick. But we do want them to stand out, not as much as the object lines, but more so than our projection lines and construction lines. Okay? And this is a good time for me to also tell you to make sure you're drawing your projection lines and your construction lines very, very lightly so that all the lines stand out the way that they should. Okay, so we are just working on all the visible edges and surfaces in the front view, top view, and right side view. Well, in the front view, that's all done. Okay, so then let's go up to the top view. Well, we need to separate surfaces B and C, and that's separated with this line and this line. They're in the same place. They're at different elevations. We're going to draw them as one line over here. And we could count that out 4 blocks over. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that would go right here. And that's pretty simple. But we also need to understand that that projects up from the front view. So this corner that I'm circling is over here in the isometric. It's that exact same spot. So I can project this straight up and through, and now this line is this line, okay? So I want to go ahead and just kind of sort of delineate it a little bit just so you guys can see it. Of course, we'll do a better job delineating it later. All right, so this is surface B, and this is surface C. Okay, now let's do the same thing in the right side view. If I come back to the isometric, I need to draw surface D and E. I need to separate those two surfaces by drawing this line and that line, which are in the same spot. So I'll just draw one line. That is 4 blocks up. I could count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes right here. But I also need to understand that that line correlates with the front view right here. So this little dot that I'm circling with my cursor is this dot or point in the isometric, and it comes across. So I'm going to project this over, and I want to draw this in. So again, I want to slightly delineate this. I'll come back and do a better job later, but just so you can see it. Okay? All right, so now we've drawn the top, front, and right side view, all the surfaces, and all the edges that are visible to us. So now what we need to do is determine if there are any hidden surfaces and hidden edges in the views. So let's start with the front view. Okay, so I want to draw an arrow, just so you understand what I'm doing here. And if I'm looking at the front view in this direction, okay, is there anything going on behind surface A, like a notch or an angled surface or something like that, that is in my line of sight but not visible to me? The answer to that is no. So that means the front view is all done. Okay, now let's look at the top view. So again, I'm going to draw an arrow up here, a red arrow. When I'm staring straight down at it, is there anything hidden to me under surface B, so under here, a notch, a hole, anything like that, that is in my line of sight but hidden? The answer is no. How about surface C? Is there anything happening under that surface that is in my line of sight but hidden to me? The answer is yes, it's the whole. Now what does that look like? Okay, well that looks like this. I want to see the leftmost edge and the rightmost edge. Now what I'm drawing is a dashed line called a hidden line. So it communicates to people that read the blueprints that there is something underneath or behind a surface that's in your line of sight but hidden to you. It's a series of dashes. It's showing something that's hidden about the object. Therefore, they have to start, look at my cursor, and end on an object line so that you're communicating that line properly. Okay, so how do I find that up here in the top view? I could count it out. It'd be one block over from my leading edge for this line, and then 1, 2, 3 blocks over from my leading edge for this one. But I need to understand that those things project up. Okay, so back to the projection. So if I project the left edge right here up and the right edge up, and then draw in my hidden lines. Just like that. Again, do I need to delineate those? Of course, with your 6H pencil. Okay, now, because that's a hole, I also need to put my vertical center line. So I need to project this center line up and put that in here. That tells me that this hidden line is my left edge of my hole or slot, and this is my right edge of my hole, okay, in this case, okay? Or anything that's round, that's why I mentioned slot. Okay, last but not least is the right side view. So if I'm back over here in the isometric, I'm looking at surface D. Is there anything behind the surface that's in my line of sight but hidden? Yes, there is. It's the hole again. But this time it's the bottom. Oh, let me put that in red. It's the bottom and the top of the hole. Again, it's showing something hidden about the object. So it has to start and end on an object line. So once again, I want to project this over. This is the top. This is the bottom. Project these over and then draw in your hidden lines. And then I need to project this horizontal center line because, again, it's something that's round. It's a hole or it's a slot or something like that, something round. Okay? All right, so now I've drawn all my visible and all of my invisible surfaces and edges. Now it's time to delineate my object lines. So this is where you're going to take your 2H pencil. It's kind of dull and thick. Use your straight edge, and you're going to delineate all of those lines. Take your time. Do a good job with your straight edge. If you need to use your eraser and eraser shield for some things, by all means use that. We're cleaning up the drawing, and we're making surfaces and edges stand out the way that they're supposed to. Make sure you're not scribbling your line. Nice, neat, straight lines as best as we can. And so you should be using your straight edge as you delineate all of your lines, whether they be object lines or center lines or hidden lines or some other line type that needs delineated. Now keep in mind that when you delineate your object lines, that you're using your 2H pencil, it should be dull, so the end of the pencil is kind of thick, make thicker lines. But when you delineate your hidden lines and your center lines, you want to use your 6H pencil and make sure that it's still sharp. But yes, we want to go over them a couple of times. Make them a little bit darker, a little bit straighter, a little bit neater. And we also are doing that so that they stand out a little bit more than our construction lines and projection lines. So there is an order object lines should stand out the most. And then it should be center lines and hidden lines. And then for what you're learning in this class, everything else will stand out after that. All right, so once you've delineated all of your lines, you've made sure your title block is all complete, then you are done. And that concludes this video tutorial.